from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy Tuesday to you. This is the Tuesday edition of the program. Welcome to our late night national town hall conversation. If you want to give us a call, feel free. 833-4825-337-833-4 And plenty going on in the world today. I'm looking at a headline here that Democrats are the party of dark money. And I found that to be interesting. I'll get into that in a moment. Let me see. What else is going on here? Some NPR veteran reporter is now saying that they have lost America's trust. And the question would be, why on earth did America trust NPR to begin with? Maybe we'll dig into the media a little bit later. And Norfolk Southern, the train company, or I should say the railroad company, they have agreed to pay $600 million in the derailment settlement that occurred in East Palestine, Ohio, or Palestine is how they say it, I believe. So those are a couple of headlines. Now, Joe Biden, Joe El Baboso Biden. Now, you know, Joe is still a baboso for sure, but he's also very old and very frail, and oftentimes I feel bad picking on him because, you know, he seems too old and frail. So I'm thinking we change the name to Joe El Viejito Biden. That means the little old guy. Joe El Viejito Biden. And he was making some remarks today on lots of things. But one of the things he was talking about today was the threat to freedom and democracy that is Donald Trump, Donaldus Magnus, El Trompito. He says that El Trompito is a threat to freedom and democracy. Now, where did he say it? He said this in an interview with Univision. Now, Univision is a network, a Spanish network, one of the two big ones, Univision and then Telemundo. And I know them well because, not just because I grew up watching this stuff because my parents watched it, but because I used to do a lot of political analysis, for local things, national things, from the Bush days. And back then they wanted a Republican, and they would cycle through like a handful of Hispanic Republicans that they knew in the New York area. And I would go on and, give my 2 cents. And it seemed like after the Bush era, they stopped calling me during the Obama years. They didn't want the Republican perspective. They would just say, some Republicans say, and, or play a clip of McConnell, and they would never try to get anybody to actually give any reaction. And they would just, it'd be a pile-on. And, contrary to what we do here, we have invited other people. I can't think of, I've lost track of count, right? Lost count of how many times we've invited the most famous Democrat running for president right now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and they keep saying, sure, yeah, we'd love to do it. And we haven't come to an agreement yet. But the door is open. That's the difference here, right? I want them to come on. They're just reluctant. Anyway, he sat down, Joe El Viejito Biden. He sat down with Enrique Acevedo. Now, Enrique Acevedo is from Univision, and he tosses this beautiful question. What, in your view, constitutes the primary threat to freedom and democracy at home? Now, I want to know, listen, if I interview Joe Biden, I might ask that question. I don't know if I would start with that, but I don't think I would, because that's not necessarily what I think matters most. I believe what I want to know from Joe Biden is, what are you doing to make America better? And I don't know that we have that one from Enrique Acevedo from Univision, but we do have him and his exchange with President Biden from earlier today on the network. Listen to this.
What, in your view, constitutes the primary threat to freedom and democracy at home?
Donald Trump. Seriously. Donald Trump uses phrases like you're going to eviscerate the Constitution. He's going to be a dictator on day one. The idea that he would sit in the office, and I'll show you before you leave, off the Oval Office, and watch for hours the attack on the Capitol and the destruction and the mayhem and the people who were killed, the police officers who died, and call them political heroes, call them patriots, and saying that if he gets elected, he's going to free them all because they're being held illegally. I mean, it's just, and think of the things he says. Look at the way he talks about minority populations, Hispanics. We're talking about them being, anyway, I can't think of any other time in my lifetime in history that's occurred that you've had somebody who's had this kind of attitude. He says I'm going to be a dictator on day one. No one doesn't believe him.
Well, that's Joe El Viejito Biden trying his best to throw some shade at El Trumpito. Now, let me share a little bit here. They had a field day when Trump said, I guess I'm going to be a dictator. I'll be a dictator on day one then, right? Because he wants to follow the rule of law. He wants to shut down the border and saying that, they're going to call him a dictator because he's following the rule of law in many different areas because of the way he's going to handle his presidency. And they've taken this, and forget the grain of salt, they've taken it with like a boulder. And they just blow it out of proportion every single day because, yes, he said it. And people who just like he said, they're good people on both sides, folks. When he's talking about the Historical Society and the other thing, people are misquoting Trump left and right, and nobody cares. The quote unquote fact checkers, they only check the facts, like my mom would say, que le convienen, the facts that are convenient to them. If it's advantageous to them, otherwise they don't do it. It's a shame. It really is a shame. And I think this is why the American people are stepping up, right? This is why the American people see what's happening. And they say, you know what? You're having a fundraiser, El Trumpito? We're going to come through. And we're going to come through big. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of small dollar donations being made. The biggest fundraising record in American history for a presidential campaign, right? These are the things that are happening right now with Trump. Not because people don't like his tweets, but because people realized life was better. Things were better during the Trump years. And that's just a fact. And we're going to talk to the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, co-chair, Lara Trump. Lara Trump is joining us in the next segment, so stick around. But before we get to Lara Trump, I also want to quickly mention, I was on Newsmax TV today. I didn't get a chance to promote that. I'm sorry. It was kind of last minute. And our discussion had to do with Lori Lightfoot. Now, you remember Lori Lightfoot. She was mayor of Chicago. And she, had not a great record, right? She made a lot of missteps. And before that, she was a federal prosecutor. Well, she's been hired at $400 an hour to go after who? A mayor in Illinois that they believe might be corrupt. Who do they hire? Lori Lightfoot. This comedy writes itself. I got to tell you. So we'll get into that, maybe not right now, but maybe a little bit later in this hour. Plus, we're going to take some of your calls at around 10:45, 10:50. So stick around. Again, we've got Lara Trump tonight. We're also going to talk about President Xi and how he's trying to become you stick around if you want to hear. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations, everybody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. So we continue our discussion. And as I mentioned earlier, the record-breaking fundraiser that we had comes as no surprise to me because I've been very critical of Ronna McDaniel for quite a while. And as you could see, the minute you change the leadership to co-chair Whatley and co-chair Lara Trump, voila, you've got the biggest take that they've ever had in fundraising history in the United States. Just quite amazing. And really, it's a testament, in my opinion, of what you see from the enthusiasm of the voters, right? The voters are putting their money where their mouth is, even if it's rich voters. Whatever the media wants to try to, however they want to try to contort it, doesn't really matter to me, because I realize that people want to do better. And I think this is incredibly indicative of that. So I want to welcome the co-chair of the Republican National Committee, Lara Trump. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Great to be back with you. And yes, we are so excited about our recent fundraising numbers. And as you said, it made history. Prior to Saturday night, which we raised $50.5 million, $50.5 million, in one single event, the largest single event fundraiser in the history of politics was the one that Joe Biden had, but he needed 3 presidents to pull in $26 million. We pretty much doubled that last Saturday night. And I think you're right. It speaks to the enthusiasm of voters. It speaks to really where we are in this country. And what was interesting to me, Rich, about that particular event is that some of those voters hadn't contributed at a level like that before. Some of those voters perhaps supported a previous candidate different than Donald Trump, but they are all coming home. And it's because I think people can feel how serious and how critical this election is truly coming up on November 5th.
Well, you know, Chairwoman Lara Trump, I think you're going to be more right. This is it's a moment that I've been waiting for, and I'm glad it's happening. I'm happy that there are people that were saying, look, I wasn't for Trump, or, I can't stand this, or I can't stand the tweets, or whatever their problem was, that they're finally looking at the bottom line. They're looking at the open border. They're looking at the inflation numbers that, I don't care what anybody says. Everybody's still spending an arm and a leg more than they were when they go to the grocery store. And every other ill that we have in our country. And I think people are realizing, you know what, this man, El Trompito, as I like to call him, he's really the best shot that we have.
I like that name. Maybe I'll try to use that for him.
Please do.
Very unique. Yeah, yes, I think he would actually like that.
El Trompito Donaldus Magnus.
Oh my gosh, he's a brander himself. You know that, my father-in-law, Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
Listen, what you're saying is right. I think that people really understand what's at stake right now, and whether it's the things you just pointed out, whether it's the inflation, whether it's the open border, whether it's the fact that we are now on the verge of World War III, it feels like to so many people out there, you can't look around right now and say life is better now with Joe Biden in office. It is the opposite. Life has gotten harder, more difficult for people, more dangerous for people. Crime is on the rise all across this country as well. And I think that, when you look specifically at Donald Trump, what you see is a man who has been targeted utilizing communist tactics by his political opponent, by Joe Biden. Look at all the things he's had to face legally that everyone knows is pure and simple political vendettas. It's all garbage. If his name were not Donald Trump, you would never see these. And so if we allow these sort of things to be successful in America, we really aren't the country we once thought we were. I think people have felt on multiple levels what is at stake right now. And I think you've also seen it in our small dollar fundraising numbers. Obviously, Look, we love a huge $50.5 million haul. But since Donald Trump became president became the nominee for president, I should say, and I'm going to speak that into fruition, by the way, 47th president.
Amen.
But since he became the nominee on the Republican side for president, the RNC and the Trump campaign have made $100 million. This is not something that we take lightly. That is a huge number. We had our biggest march ever in fundraising history with $65.6 million raised in March. But the $100 million, the 98% of that money was under $200. Our average donation to the campaign and the RNC, $54. That tells you that the people of this country are on Donald Trump's side. They want him back in office. They are supporting him monetarily, even at a time as challenging as we're seeing right now for so many people with their money.
Lara Trump, and that's fantastic. And I don't know if you have that information available to you, but I know when we look at some of the polls, we see that some of the people that are now putting their support behind Trump in these polls are are not the usual suspects. We're seeing a lot of black men that didn't vote for Trump before. We're seeing more and more Hispanic men, some that did vote for Trump, some that didn't. And you're seeing this enthusiasm amongst minorities, in particular men, that are saying, you know what, enough is enough. I believe what this guy stands for. He's trying to make things better, and he's our guy. And the media will try and spin that and twist that and do all sorts of things with it. And then they revert always back to the same talking point, which is white suburban moms. and I'm meeting white suburban moms, and they're like, yeah, El Trumpito all the way. So I'm wondering, are we catching steam? Is it just more hype from the media? What say you?
Yeah, well, listen, you're right. And I know these numbers very well. I know them by heart. In 2020, Donald Trump got 8% of the black vote. Right now, he's polling at 23% with black voters. That is huge. That is unprecedented. You've never seen a Republican ever in history with numbers like that. And that sort of thing is terrifying to the Democrats. You talk about Hispanic voters. Right now in a head-to-head matchup, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, Joe Biden is polling at 40% with Hispanic voters, Donald Trump at 46%. The youth vote, you know, they've thought on the left that they have this locked down, that you got the kids on TikTok, you're feeding them all the nonsense via Hollywood and these actors. They are losing so much support among voters 18 to 34 years old right now. And, you know, I think it just speaks to the fact that every person can only be lied to for so long. You know, people maybe bought into some of the nonsense they heard about Donald Trump the first time, or sort of, as you alluded to at the beginning of this segment, oh, I didn't like a tweet, I didn't like his tone of voice, I didn't like the way he said these things. But when push comes to shove, and when the rubber meets the road, and it's your bottom line, or it's your safety, or your kid's safety, or your child's education, those things ultimately matter. And all you have to do is something that I think is amazing, and we have an opportunity to do right now, actually compare two presidencies. We had Donald Trump for 4 years. You can very clearly see what the economy was like, what the job numbers, the real job numbers actually were, how low inflation was, how secure we were, how, you had things like peace agreements in the Middle East instead of wars breaking out in the Middle East. And you can contrast that very easily with Joe Biden, and it's basically 180 degrees in the other direction. So from suburban moms to black men to Hispanic voters, people in this country are smart enough at a certain point to say, hey, I think I've been sold a false bill of goods on this guy. I know one thing, my life was certainly better with Donald Trump as president, and people are waking up every day and saying that.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're 100% right. And I think somebody I didn't expect to underscore that point was the actor Michael Rappaport. He said exactly what you just said. He didn't like Trump, then he didn't like, he said, all right, I'm open to Trump. Now he's saying we need Trump. We have to have Trump. It's unbelievable. Folks, we're on with Lara Trump. She's the co-chair of the Republican National Committee and doing a bang-up job. She's been there for, I don't know, a week, 10 days, and already killing the game. Congrats, Lara Trump. We're coming right back with Lara Trump. Don't move a muscle.
Call screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, seguimos. We continue with Lara Trump, co-chair of the Republican National Committee, and we've been talking about fundraising, but I want to switch gears, Lara Trump, and I want to talk about the upcoming election. There's a lot of people talking about a lot of things. I think the RFK campaign has been, RFK Jr., very, very lackluster in my opinion. I think he helps Trump more than he hurts him. I think he hurts Biden more than he helps him. And his choice for VP I thought was interesting. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think you're exactly right. Listen, he certainly has ruffled a lot of feathers on the left, and he will be very easily siphoning voters away from Joe Biden. I mean, look, the Democrats are really unenthusiastic about their nominee for president. This guy has proven that from every single policy standpoint, he's made the wrong decision. He's hurt Americans. This guy is embarrassing on the world stage. He's embarrassing anytime he gets in front of a camera. And he has the lowest approval rating of any incumbent in history running for re-election. So they've got a big problem on their hands. And a lot of these people, obviously, God bless them, they suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. So we know some of them will never come over fully, but they would maybe vote for an RFK Jr. So I think you're right. I think he really could do some damage on the left. And I think you've seen that. You've seen the Biden campaign in a bit of a frenzy over the fact that this guy is hanging around and that he's going to go all the way. And he's really dug into that. He's picked a VP pick as well. And so, yeah, this is an interesting time. Look, it's an interesting time to be alive in history. And certainly we're paying very close attention to that. But, yeah, we're not too worried about RFK on our side of the aisle.
Yeah, and nor should you be. But I think it's interesting. You've got RFK that's picked a VP candidate. You've got Biden, if he is in fact the candidate, has his VP candidate. And then we have El Trompito, who's yet to take somebody on. And there's a lot of names floating around, all sorts of things that are out there. What do you know? What can you tell us?
Well, I won't be breaking any news here tonight officially. However, look, I think the thing that you have to remember with Donald Trump is he really changed the face of the Republican Party. You know, this party is a wide open tent now. Everyone is welcome to be a Republican. And I don't think that people totally felt that way before he got involved in politics. And he certainly has made people very interested in politics, sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes for the wrong reasons. But what he wants to do is ensure that he chooses a vice presidential running mate who can carry the mantle on. This movement that he created in America is a once-in-a-lifetime type of thing, and he wants to ensure that whoever it is that he decides to choose, and you're right, we have some amazing people on our side of the aisle from which he can choose. And the names get thrown around all the time. A lot of these folks are always around Mar-a-Lago. I know many of them very, very well. And whoever it is he decides to choose, I can tell you will be an America First patriot, loves this country, and would be ready to step in on day one and carry on the policies and the movement that Donald Trump started.
All right. I'll take that. I'll take that as far as I can take it.
You're going to have to take it because that's all we're going to get tonight.
Right. That's all we got. Now, we're talking about the election, and something that I hear often is that Biden's not going to make it. He's not going to be the nominee. I don't know how true that is. Honestly, it could go either way for me. It's a legit coin toss. Maybe he does pull out. Maybe he doesn't. I just don't see how that works out if we do move forward, if they do try to pull something off at their convention. What are your thoughts on that happening?
Yeah, I've been 50-50 on it, too. You know, it's crazy because who would think that you could actually have this guy as a candidate.
Right.
I mean, look, I think 2020, they were able to use a little smoke and mirrors. They kept him in the basement. Oh, we're trying to be safe under COVID. You had the hula hoops at his little events that he would have. But it is really apparent that there has been some sort of degradation of some variety in his mental acuity. Yeah. This guy can't even walk very well. He's got to have special shoes now. He can't wear dress shoes. He comes down the short stairs on Air Force One. And so I myself have said there's no way they can actually legitimately run this guy as their candidate. But then you kind of look at Joe Biden. I mean, man, his life has been leading up to this moment. This guy's been in politics longer than I've been alive. And from people on the inside, they seem to indicate that he's very dug into that position, that he is staying there and he's not going anywhere. And then you have to ask yourself, well, who would it be? If they actually decide we're going to usher Joe Biden out, and you kind of feel like maybe some of the media was trying to do that a little bit. Sure. They've been hitting him a little harder than they used to. Maybe there's some plan afoot. Who would it be? Would it be a Gavin Newsom? Michelle Obama has said she's not going to be doing it. Who do you have on the Democrat side that's really going to get people jazzed up? Is it really Gavin Newsom from California, a guy who has driven his state straight into the ground? We know that they're full blown on identity politics on the left. They really want another white guy running as president of the United States. I don't know. I don't know how they go about this, but the truth is they're in a pickle on the left, and they seem to be doing quite a bit of campaigning for us every day that passes, because you don't have to look too far to see the major issues in this country and the incredible flaws in who they have as their current candidate, at least, Joe Biden.
Yeah, I think you're right. And just like, Donald J. Trump has a name, Joe R. Biden has a name here. We call him Joe El Baboso Biden, which means a kind of bumbling, foolish kind of person. And I'm thinking of changing that to Joe El Viejito Biden, which means the little old man, because I feel bad taking shots at the guy. I don't think he can defend himself like he used to. He's
bless
there
his
saying,
heart, as we say in North Carolina. Yeah,
yeah, right. Bless his heart.
Yeah,
he's saying he's taking El Trumpito behind the bleachers, and he can't figure out how to get off the stage. Now, Lara Trump. There is, whenever you guys pull in a big fundraising haul, and I think it's fantastic, it shows me that the political process is alive and well. But there's always people, right? I do talk radio. People call in, and they're like, oh, it doesn't matter what they raise, Rich. It doesn't matter how good Trump's doing. They're going to steal the election. It's rigged, right? And everybody's bent out of shape. And there have some positive changes that have occurred with respect to that. And, of course, you fight and you fight and you fight. But there is a shift in the media now where they're saying, we think this may not be as secure as it used to be. Do you think that signals that they're likely not going to cheat, or not as much in the next election?
Well, here's what I can tell you. I think that there has been cheating for a long time. I think everybody's aware of that now. And that's the good news, is that we've called them out on it, right? We played the game a lot differently on our side of the aisle for far too long. We tried to be above board and say, oh, we're not even going to talk about it. Not only are we talking about it, we're playing a different game now. And so we've made major changes at the RNC and at the Trump campaign, changes like we want to make sure that people get out and vote early. We want to bank so many votes leading up to November 5th that it doesn't matter how many 3 a.m. dumps they have. It doesn't matter how many ballots of suitcases they have. Donald Trump will be the resounding victor on November 5th. We want to do things at the RNC like legal ballot harvesting. You look at the left, they've been ballot harvesting for far too long, and we haven't been doing any of that. We better be going to places where our people gather, and we better be banking those votes for them if it's legal in their area. We are doing two things at the RNC. We are getting out the vote, and we are protecting the vote. And I think the number one thing, aside from getting people enthusiastic to vote, which, let's face it, Donald Trump himself is doing for us, is protecting the vote, election integrity. We have 81 lawsuits out right now across the country in 24 states. These are to make it harder to cheat and easier to vote. We just won a big victory in Pennsylvania, by the way. Talk about mail-in voting. That's something else that people have had a lot of questions about for a long time. We want to ensure that it is secure and that people feel like they can mail in their votes. So in Pennsylvania, the Democrats were trying to get rid of having a date on your mail-in vote. We just got that reversed at the RNC, and that set a big precedent for us, because that way we can take that across the country and say, hey, they said it here in Pennsylvania, we can apply it over here. I think we also have to ensure that people understand, if you cheat in this election, we will find you and we will prosecute you to the full extent of the law. It isn't worth it to do it. So we have to call it out. We have to be ready for it. And right now, we also have the ability at the RNC, something we haven't been able to do for 40 years because there was a moratorium on it, trained poll workers. These aren't just people who stand in a polling location. They are trained. They can handle the ballots. They can count how many come in. They count how many go out. We're going to have attorneys, paid and volunteer, at every major polling location across the country. So at a moment's notice, they can jump to action and address any issue they might see. We're leaving nothing to chance. That's what I want to make clear to the people of this country. This is a must-win election, and our highest priority at the RNC, aside from, of course, getting people out to vote for Donald Trump and Republicans down tickets so we can take back the Senate and expand our lead in the House as well, is election integrity. We are focused on it like a laser. It is the number one priority we have at the RNC right now.
Madam Chair, outstanding. I'm giving you a standing ovation from where I sit.
Oh, thank you.
I'm really, it's great to hear the head of the Republican Party speaking that way, being a fighter and not pulling any punches, because that's what the American people want to hear. Folks, we're on with Lara Lee Trump. She's the co-chairwoman of the Republican National Committee. Lara, let everybody know where they should go if they want to learn more or support the work you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to volunteer, if you want to be part of history, which I think we are in right now, DonaldJTrump.com. We would love to have you on our team. We'd love to have you as a door knocker, a legal ballot harvester, a poll watcher, a poll worker. If you're a lawyer who wants to donate your time as well, DonaldJTrump.com, GOP.com. You can also donate there if you feel so inclined to support this movement. And for me, I'm Lara Lee Trump, LARALEA Trump, on all the different platforms. And I just want to say thank you, though, to everybody out there, because I think you feel what is going on right now in this country. And the enthusiasm and the support out there is so, so great. And everywhere I go, people are really excited. And they say, if I could go vote for your father-in-law today, I would go do it today. Wait until the early vote starts, go out and vote. And then every day from that moment on, take people to the polling locations, get them to vote. Let's lock this thing down. Let's do it. We're here. We're fighting. And I'm just excited to be on the team.
Lara, you are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed to you. Thanks for being with us.
You got it. Thank you so much.
You bet. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez with you straight till 1 a.m. Eastern Time, keeping you company tonight. And we just wrapped up our conversation with Lara Trump, the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee. And she's been there again. I was exaggerating saying a week. She's been there longer than that, but relatively a short amount of time. And she's done more in this last month or so than Ronna McDaniel did in her entire tenure. And that's not exaggeration. That's the real deal. So kudos to her. Kudos to the work that they're doing. It's great to see this new energy, this new life that's been breathed into the Big Tent Party. And I want to get your thoughts on everything we're discussing. Let me give you the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let us go to Vero Beach and check in with John. John, go right ahead.
Yes, Rich, thank you again. God bless you and your whole team for getting the truth out to the United States of American citizens, us voters. Yes, I think we RNC. Thank God they're getting on the stick here and getting with it with regard to voter integrity. And while we're at it, why don't we just drill down on all these any computer companies that are handling the votes in any way, whether balloting or counting the ballots or tabulating the ballots, and do a forensic exam and properly vet these computer companies that handle the ballots and count them before the election and after.
Well, what are you suggesting with these companies? What exactly do you want to happen?
Properly vet them, ensure that those computers cannot be hacked into during or before or during or after during the ballot counting. So these computers cannot be programmed or programs changed mid-count or anything like that to to count ballots that are cast from one side and throw the ballots to the other.
Yeah, it would. I think it's a lot to ask for something so simple. The reality is, and I think you're right, obviously, but I think that the issue is that so many people during the break, I was complaining that one of the two computers I use in the studio was acting up, and I said, I don't know which of the two is which. Because whenever I've had a problem with this, I contact our IT support people, and they're able to log in remotely, and they know exactly which one of these two computers is which by name. But I don't know the difference, and they're right in front of me because they're identical. And what's interesting is that's the reality of technology today, right? So I think while many of us would be like, yeah, it makes sense, just do a paper ballot, like the old machine where you pull that lever down. And I love that idea. I think so many of us do. But I think governments across the country are erring on the side of technology, and lamentably, and I think it was what was his name? Something Pulitzer. I forget his first name. Jovan Pulitzer, who testified in one of Rudy Giuliani's hearings on election integrity back in 2020, that these systems are very hackable because they can get connected to the internet. So I think you bring up an excellent point. The issue is I just don't know that these governments are willing to do that, because most of them, I think, are going to say, no, it's how are we going to get these machines serviced? We need the IT people to be able to log in and to do this and to do that. So again, I'm with you. I'm with you on the paper ballot. I'm with you on keeping it simple. I'm with you on getting it done the right way. And you just heard Lara Trump say that they have a whole lot of things in place, and we've seen a few different rules change. But I think there's plenty of work that we need to do yet. And I do think, on a positive note, I think if you're in a bad neighborhood and they're mugging people, or like, for example, New York City, where they're punching women in the face, just these crazy people just punching women in the face, I think all it takes is a couple of times for one of these guys, and I've seen one video I saw yesterday, guy punches a lady in the face, doesn't knock her down, so he goes and he punches her again, and she stumbles into a wall. And right when she does, a guy that's walking by punches the bad guy. Then another guy that's like right next to him punches him too. Next thing you know, there's 5 or 6 men on top of the main puncher, and they laid a beating on this guy. What'd you say, Tom? So, yeah, that stuff is happening. And I think you send a message and then people kind of fall in line. Big shout out to Vero Beach, everybody listening. Folks, don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue with your calls. Let's go to Nick in La Crosse, Wisconsin on WIZM. Nick, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Okay, Rich, I got one question is, who do you think that President Trump should pick for a running mate?
I think he should pick Congressman Byron Donalds from Florida. I don't think it's going to happen. Oh, he's terrific. That's who I would love for him to pick. Originally from Brooklyn, lives in Florida now, and I think he's terrific. But I doubt that he'll be the pick, only because I don't think, both of them being Florida residents, I just don't think it's going to happen. So I would probably think maybe Governor Kristi Noem. She's been talked about a lot. There's been some talk about former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat, who was part of Bernie Sanders' campaign a million years ago. I don't know enough about her, and what I do know about her, I don't think she's the person. But we shall see. But those are my thoughts. Anyway, folks, the music means I've got to go. We're coming right back with your calls and more, and a new topic and a new guest. Don't go anywhere, folks. It's Rich Valdez, America at Night. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of the Tuesday night edition of the program. If you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Plenty to discuss tonight. Of course, in the first hour, we had the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, the new chairwoman, Lara Trump. And what a great interview that was. Hopefully you didn't miss it. If you did, you can always check it out at richvaldez.com. Now, I want to talk about a few things. There was an abortion law back in 1864 that the Arizona Supreme Court just upheld today, saying that they can continue the ban as it was written back in 1864, which in effect bans most abortions in the state of Arizona. So that's pretty interesting, and we'll dig into that a little bit later as well. There's also the couple of stories here. There's some Israel stories I'm going to get to a little bit later. There's a big Ukraine story that was out that I wanted to get into today about the money and about just a lot of stuff with Ukraine funding. We're actually going to tackle that tomorrow in the first hour of the program. I have a really good guest on that I want to really get into. And that's, of course, the former CIA director, what's his name? James Brennan. He says that Trump has given Putin the green light to take all of Europe. So I want to work on that story and really unpack it. Anyway, the movie The Joker is coming back. Joker Part 2 is coming out. And there's a bunch of stories here. But when we look at Hollywood, when we look at what's happening in Europe, when we look at what's happening even in Asia, right, where you have the Chinese Communist Party doing what they do best, right, spreading propaganda, divide and conquer, imprisoning the Uyghur Muslims and torturing and abusing them, and all sorts of things. It makes me think, how much more time do we have in America to enjoy the freedom that we have? Now, I know again, Rich, you're being a McCarthyite, you're being ridiculous, it's the Red Scare, and it's not. It's that I look around and I see things happening. I see the communist Chinese and their cultural revolution seeping into American institutions. And that's just a reality. It doesn't look like it did. You know, we're not having a Tiananmen Square moment yet, and maybe never, right? It looks like DEI in many ways. It looks like, and if you don't follow DEI, then you get dinged through the social credit score that they call ESG, that most corporations are forced to adhere to. Or you get canceled, right? Like Trump getting thrown off of Twitter back in 2020. There's so many ways that they'll come at you. The FBI paying you a visit just because of something you wrote, because of, your political differences and whatnot. And again, I don't support this one woman that we talked about yesterday, but like Voltaire said, I may not agree with what you're saying, but I support your right to say it, because that's the essence of our constitutional system, and we have to do that. And I want to get into what President Xi from China is doing as they engage in what he calls unrestricted warfare. And that is where they do whatever they got to do to get whatever they've got to get done. And President Xi wants to be the biggest global superpower. That's no surprise. But the lengths they go to, I think, will surprise a lot of you. Alex Nestor, she's an investigative fellow at Parents Defending Education, and she's here with us to talk about what is going on with these Marxist communist practices and how they're secretly seeping into American culture. Alex Nestor, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. So I'm looking at a piece, the opinion piece here that you've got, Washington Examiner, and it's a shame that we see Chinese communism coming in, particularly not just Hollywood, but through our school system. Tell us more.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So last summer, Parents Defending Education, we released a report that found that over the course of about a decade, a little longer, 143 school districts in the United States had fostered ties either with the Chinese Ministry of Education or other CCP-affiliated entities. So there was that. We found a list of school districts that have been contracting with Tutor.com, which wasn't an issue until 2022 when it was purchased by Primavera Capital Group, which has ties to ByteDance, is located in China, and therefore is subject to Chinese law that may compel the business to share user data, in this case, user data on American children with the Chinese Communist Party, with the Chinese government. And finally, in November, Xi Jinping invited or announced that he would invite 50,000 American students on all expense-paid trips to China over the next 5 years. So far, already one school district in Muscatine, Iowa, has taken him up on this offer. And look, all of these pieces are, like you mentioned, part of a much larger strategy to unseat the United States as the world's predominant military and economic superpower. And for freedom, both here and abroad, we cannot let that happen, and we cannot let our children be on the front line of this fight.
Why not, Alex Nestor, to play devil's advocate? Because I say things like this sometimes, and people, that's what they tell me. They go, why? Why can't we be number 2, 3, 4, 5? Why can't we just focus on America first, forget about what's happening globally, and mind our own business?
So, look, I think there are some people who maybe are frustrated by past decisions of the U.S. military. But look, if China is the world's first and foremost superpower, they get to dictate. The Chinese Communist Party is the biggest enemy to freedom, both in the United States and abroad. And it's unfortunate that, we have to at times have wars and have conflict and battle the evil that is out there. The good nations, good people don't want to have war. But when we're met with the issues that we're seeing coming out of China, whether it's the genocide of Uyghurs, whether it's enslaving Congolese children in cobalt mines in Africa, which, is needed to make electric vehicles, right, whether it's the Tiananmen Square massacre or what have you. I mean, repeated examples that China is no friend to freedom. They are no friend to, the values that we hold dear here in the United States, that people are equal under the law, that people have, that people are made by God, that people are not just subject to the whims of whatever dictator, whatever ruler. China obviously doesn't think that way. And so that is why we cannot let them, first of all, into our schools, obviously in this example, or more broadly, unseat us as the world's global superpower.
Good answer. And I agree with that. I think the minute you cede any authority, any space, any territory, any power, they're going to take it. And you said that right now they're number 1, and I agree with you. They're the biggest threat. But numbers 2 and 3 aren't any better. And there's a lot of people out there that agree with me on a lot of things, and probably agree with you on a lot of things, that are fanatical about Vladimir Putin. And again, I'm not a fan. What are your thoughts?
On Putin specifically?
Yeah, in terms of, Putin is, in my opinion, a friendlier ally of China than he is of the United States. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I mean, I think what we're seeing right now, and what's very scary, it's scary to see U.S. schools cozying up to people like Xi Jinping. I mean, I think, like you're saying, like we're saying, is, enemy number 1. I say that not as a foreign policy expert here. So maybe, good to get someone like that in the room. But look, you see him, you see Putin, you see others, being close, like getting close to each other, these dictators that, again, are no friends of freedom, that do not they hate the United States. And you also see it in terms of the absolute vitriol and hatred that Israel is getting to defend itself. The chant "death to America" or "death to Israel" is often followed by "death to America." So yes, you are seeing right now, I think, on a global level, you are seeing defenders of freedom, and you are seeing terrorists, you are seeing dictators cozy up together. And I think that's very scary. And I think it's very scary that we are letting one of those regimes, one of those dictators, dictate what American students are learning about a communist regime like China.
Yeah, I think it's extraordinarily well put. Folks, Alex Nestor is an investigative fellow at Parents Defending Education, and we're discussing her piece in the Washington Examiner. And there's still more to come, so if you want to join the conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we continue our conversation with Alex Nestor. She is an investigative fellow at Parents Defending Education and has an excellent piece in the Washington Examiner. And Alex, we left off discussing how the United States and the parents here in the United States, both the citizenry and our government, should not allow China to cozy up to any of our institutions, whether it's the educational establishment or anything else, because of the threat that China poses to us. Yet it continuously happens. Let's talk about some of the examples of how they're seeping into culture by way of education.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the more recent examples, as mentioned, are these free trips that China is offering through its Ministry of Education. And on the surface level, what makes it, it just sounds so great to provide kids with the opportunity to learn Chinese language and culture and go and visit China. And surely we do want our kids learning Chinese language, and we want kids learning about Chinese culture. Notably, it's very rich culture and history before communism. But when you have the Chinese Communist Party dictating the narratives that American children are learning about China, that is a problem, because they will not be learning about Uyghur genocide. They will not be learning about the Tiananmen Square massacre, and they certainly won't be learning about Mao's Great Leap Forward, which killed an estimated 30 to 45 million Chinese. So that is a serious problem. That's a more recent example. We also saw, as mentioned in our Little Red Classrooms report from last summer, that you had the Chinese Ministry of Education or other entities affiliated with the CCP partnering with American school districts. This happened sometimes after a Confucius Institute at the university level was shut down, and the assets were then transferred to K-12 schools. So lots of different frightening ways that the CCP is embedding themselves in our K-12 schools.
And I can't stress enough how important this is. For those that are, just tuning in, we're on with Alex Nestor. She's an investigative fellow at Parents Defending Education. And Alex, if you don't mind, just for everybody who's new to this particular conversation, when you mention a Confucius Institute, give the audience a little bit of context on what they are, what they do, and how sinister they are.
Yeah, so before 2020, that is when the State Department officially released a report that said, rightly, that Confucius Institutes were a propaganda arm of the Chinese Communist Party. And the Confucius Institute, compared to the classroom at the K-12 level, Confucius Institute is the Chinese language and culture programming provided at the university level. Rightly, there were many concerns about Chinese espionage through these programs. We've seen continuous reports of Chinese spies taking information back from our universities, sometimes through those programs. So that's also what's happening at the K-12 level through Confucius classrooms is the K-12 version of that. But, after that State Department report was released in 2020, ostensibly, the number of Confucius Institutes has gone down. It was something like in the 100s, 120. Now it's, maybe a handful, a dozen or so. But we do know, and we found several cases of those assets being transferred to K-12 school districts. One case is Western Kentucky University. It was then transferred to a local school district there, which is very concerning.
And folks, we're on with Alex Nestor. Alex, I want to take a moment to go to one of our callers. Ralph in Burlington, Vermont, has a question for you. He's calling from WVMT. Ralph, you're on with Alex Nestor. Go right ahead quickly. All right. I don't think we have Ralph. Sorry, Ralph. But Ralph, what I was told on my computer was that Ralph had a question about communist influence and how Senator Sanders, his particular senator in Vermont, is using similar tactics, I guess, promoting not Confucius Institutes, but more partnerships with China. And Senator Sanders himself was a big supporter of, traveling to these communist countries. He himself doing his honeymoon in Moscow.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. It's a great question. And look, I'll have to say, especially at the state level, there are both Republicans and Democrats who have been very bad on this issue. Notably in Missouri, the former governor of Missouri works for Partners with a nonprofit organization that also helps to foster these connections. So I think, up until maybe 5 years ago, maybe a little longer, I think you had still a lot of, businessmen, people who worked in business, who did business in China, who still wanted to support and facilitate these connections. And I think we're good-natured in doing so. I think recent revelations, things that have been reported to us, whether we're talking about Uyghur genocide, whether we're talking about China trying to dictate our energy policy here, and at the same time they're enslaving children in cobalt mines in Africa. All of these different revelations, I think, can show us now that, hey, we need to be very, very wary about these types of partnerships. I'll also say, too, at the federal level, both Republican and Democratic leadership on the House Select Committee on the CCP have been very good on the issue too. So I will say, yes, you've got good and bad on both sides of the aisle here. And I'm willing to work with anyone who wants to get Chinese influence out of our schools, and I'm opposed to anyone who wants Chinese Communist Party influence in our schools.
Amen to that. Alex Nestor, let everybody know how they can find you and follow you.
Yeah, you can find Parents Defending Education at defendinged.org and on Twitter at defendinged.
And is there a handle for your own social media?
Yes, I think my Twitter handle is Alex M. Nestor.
Very good. Yeah, sometimes I forget mine too. Folks, Alex Nestor is an investigative fellow at Parents Defending Education. You heard where to follow her and where to reach her. Alex, you are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I'm grateful for the work that you're doing. Keep ringing that bell for liberty.
Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Godspeed. And the rest of America, we're coming back, and we're going to continue our conversation with some more of what the communists like to call climate change. We're going to talk about that with our buddy Steve Milloy straight ahead. And believe it or not, there's a new study out that says that you're using too much carbon if you're wearing blue jeans. I'm not kidding. I'm Rich Valdez.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich
All right, America, welcome back, amigos. And check this out. We've got a new study from Guangdong University of Technology in China, and they're attempting to induce fear-mongering for wearing blue jeans. Yep. The study reveals that wearing a pair of jeans just once is the equivalent to driving, take two, driving a car for 6.4 miles. Now, this is what they're alleging is, based on carbon consumption, right? Saying that wearing jeans just once is the equivalent of driving a car for 6.4 miles. I can barely say that with a straight face because I just don't see it, right? I don't see it. But this is how they push the this mantra that they have for climate change and get everybody to kind of fear absolutely everything that has anything to do with anything. So I want to get to the bottom of this, and none other than our expert who's been here plenty of times before, and I'm glad he's back tonight, Steve Milloy. He is a senior legal fellow and former Trump EPA transition team member, and he's here with us tonight. Steve Milloy, welcome back.
Hey, Rich, thanks for having me back.
You bet. So I want to get into this because I think, first of all, I'm thinking, they're saying if you use jeans once, right? So I'm guessing using it once and then washing it once and not getting multiple wears out of it is somehow the equivalent of driving 6.5 miles. This is just insane to me. And during the break, I was saying, it's funny how a pair of pants that were created for long-term use for people during the California Gold Rush, right? That they added rivets to it and everything to really be a durable pair of pants. And my producer said, that's riveting. And I thought that was pretty funny. Pants that have rivets in them, right? And the way that this whole thing is coming about is just shocking to me that they're making this correlation. But help us understand how they get to this conclusion.
Well, the important thing to know is your jeans are not destroying the planet. It's not like driving a car. Not that driving a car is bad. Driving a car is good for a number of reasons. This is an effort by the left to climatize everything. Just they want to get you thinking and scared about climate. So everything you like causes global warming. And, this particular study is, focuses on jeans. And, of course, climate alarmists have focused on clothing and fashion for some time. They're trying to, they just want to infiltrate the idea that everything we do is causing global warming and destroying the planet. Therefore, we shouldn't even really exist. This is just total nonsense. This calculation of wearing your jeans once, like driving a car 6.4 miles, is ridiculous. There's no such thing. It has no effect on the environment. It has no effect on the climate. It's just scaremongering.
Yeah. And folks, again, we're on with Steve Milloy, senior legal fellow at Energy and Environment Legal Institute. And Steve, I'm looking at the information I have in front of me, and apparently they pointed out 10 factoids on jeans, cars, and the climate. And I want you to walk us through those because I think it's remarkable that the way you're refuting these things.
Yeah, so they talk about driving like it's this bad thing. Well, cars have given us more freedom than almost any other technology. Driving gets you where you want to go, where you need to go, when you need to go there. And it does it in comfort. People love their cars. People love being able to drive. Trying to demonize driving is insane. Driving is good for our economy, right? It takes us so we can shop, we can buy food, we can buy stores, we can go on trips, we can do this, we get to work. Driving is important. The modern cars hardly emit anything, just mostly water vapor, maybe some carbon dioxide. Water vapor is a natural part of the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is plant food. So what's wrong with that? There's, at this point, there's really no scientific evidence that links emissions with anything bad that's going on in the atmosphere or weather or anything like that. So it's just ridiculous, this notion that cars, are bad for the environment, bad for the planet, bad for us. And then So they set cars up as bad. You're just supposed to assume cars are evil, and then they try to liken your clothes, in this case jeans, to cars. But of course, we need clothing. I mean, if you're going to say jeans have a carbon footprint, well, all clothing has a carbon footprint. Jeans, as you pointed out, been around for a long time. They're comfortable, useful, stylish. They're very popular. Rugged clothes last a long time. How can you attack clothing? We need clothing. There's an industry that makes clothing. It's good for the economy.
Right.
So, that's ridiculous. And then, just the whole climate thing. Recently, the 2022 Nobel Physics Prize winner, a scientist, remember now, the climate alarmists call people like me deniers, okay? But here's the 2022 Nobel Physics Prize winner who says quite plainly that there is no climate crisis and that climate hysteria is a hoax.
Wow!
So this whole story is just a fail. Yeah. So the whole story is just a fail.
Right, folks. We're on with Steve Milloy. He is a senior legal fellow at the E&E Institute, and he was a Trump EPA transition team member, making sense of the climate crazies. And we're coming right back. The number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we're on with our guest, Steve Milloy. Steve Milloy is a no-nonsense kind of guy when it comes to the environment and calling out exactly what is going on. And Steve Milloy, you were just, went through a laundry list of things, which are great points, about the Guangdong University study that says using your jeans only once is destroying the planet. It's like driving a car 6.5 miles. You're evil. This is bad. But I don't hear them saying anything about electric vehicles, which they claim are so good for the environment. But you and I know that's not the case, is it?
Yeah. No. So, where do you start with EVs? EVs start with child slave labor in the Congo. The Chinese own the coal mines in the Congo, where 70% of the global supply of cobalt comes from. Cobalt goes into EV batteries. While much of that cobalt is produced industrially, much of it is produced by artisanal miners, including 30 to 40,000 children who crawl down into these caves, pick out the cobalt, and then go sell it to Chinese Communist trading posts. And it goes back to China to be processed, and it goes into all our EVs. If you've ever heard of if you recall blood diamonds, so these are really blood EVs. Many EVs and EV parts and batteries come from materials that are mined in China. They have no environmental regulations. It's an environmental disaster in China. It's a human rights disaster. When you get an EV, you have to drive the thing for tens of thousands of miles before. If you're worried about emissions, you've got to drive the thing for tens of thousands of miles to break even on that. China is supposed to be leading the way in EVs. Well, in China with EVs, because they're all charged by coal-fired power plants, they don't reduce emissions at all. There's just really no point in these things. They cost more. If you were to buy Trump gasoline, Trump priced gasoline, on the order of somewhere between $2 to $3 a gallon, it actually costs less money to fuel with Trump gasoline than Biden electricity. So there's just really no point to have. I mean, and that's without even going into, just the inconvenience and the time wasting and the expense of EVs.
Now, recently, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to add. Taxpayers heavily subsidize these things for if you drive an EV for 10 years, taxpayers will subsidize $50,000 worth of your costs.
Wow. So whenever I see that nice Tesla pass by, I'm paying for a piece of that. I should ask for a ride. I like the Tesla. I mean, I just, after seeing what I saw when they freeze and they just stop working, I was like,
Look, so I think, EVs are, if they're just a choice that consumers can have, okay, cool. I thought Elon Musk was doing well when EVs were, he was making cool EVs and they were a consumer choice. That's fine. They don't need to be subsidized. But if they're going to be mandated, well, I have a problem with that. That's where I draw the line.
Now, what about these trucks, right? Because I know the Biden administration was talking about making like tractor trailers electric, and if it makes a regular car weigh a ton more, imagine what it's going to do to trucks, Steve Milloy.
Yeah. So. The range on an EV truck is maybe 170 miles versus up to 2,000 miles for, a diesel-powered semi. And the whole thing is just made really insane by the fact that, 2.5 years ago, Biden got $7.5 million to build chargers for EVs. In that 2.5 years, with $7.5 billion, he has built 7 EV charging stations. Now, with trucks, they require a lot more. There was an estimate, it was in the Wall Street Journal not too long ago, we would, to satisfy Biden's mandate for EV trucks, we would have to build 15,000 chargers a month for the next 7 years.
Wow. It's funny. I saw this. I went to the gym the other day, and while I didn't see any transgenders in the locker room, thankfully, my buddy was like, wow, there's like 15 charging things for Teslas. And I was like, yeah, they're always there. And he was like, who pays for that? And I was like, I don't know. I'm guessing the mall here, like, that the developer. But I said, but I'm really guessing the rest of us. I'm sure that there was some sort of rebate or tax abatement or some deal that they got when building it. And they said, hey, put 15 of those things in there. And they did. And I'm sure it was a taxpayer-funded thing. What's the scoop on that?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is taxpayer subsidized. Maybe not all of it. It's really hard to know. There was in the infrastructure package 2.5 years ago, there was $7.5 billion. Not much has been done with it. So most of these charging stations have been sort of privately financed, but they're not doing very well. They don't really, they're not maintained well. They're not very useful. Often EV drivers will get to a charging station and they're broken. In a famous incident, Department of Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm, she's driving cross country. She got to an EV station. It was full. She tried to pull rank on the person that was charging. The person had a baby. There was a fracas. The police had to be called. I mean, I
think they locked up one of her staffers or something like that.
Outside of like the 1970s gas lines, I've never heard of a fight at a gas station. I mean, it takes 5 minutes to fill your car up and you're on your way.
Yeah, you're right. It's absolute insanity what's going on here with these things. And the point that my buddy brought up, he said, are those the rapid chargers or the regular ones? I was like, they got to be the regular ones because those people are there when I go into the gym and they're there when I get out. Yeah. And they're sitting in their car on their phone, twiddling their thumbs because I guess they're out of gas, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the rapid chargers are a lot more expensive, so it's harder for shopping malls to install them. I think Tesla has probably been the best with the charging stations, most successful. So, but still, I mean, there is nothing going on good in the EV market. I mean, the whole thing is just really falling apart. Last year Ford lost, somewhere between $30,000 to $60,000 per EV sold.
Wow.
GM had to buy out half of his Buick dealers because they didn't want to sell EVs. Ford had to buy out half of its dealers who didn't want to sell EVs anymore. Many car manufacturers have just bailed out of the EV business. EV plants have shut down. There's just really nothing going on that's good. Hybrids have apparently been more successful. So I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see hybrid cars, and EVs are just going to become, I don't know, maybe the new Edsel.
Folks, we're on with Steve Milloy. Check him out on Twitter at Junk Science. At Junk Science is a great follow. And check out the blog as well, junkscience.com. Folks, we're coming right back with Steve Milloy. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And we continue with Steve Milloy. 833-482-5337 is the phone number. Open Phone America is coming up right after this at the top of the next hour. I want to encourage you to call in. If you've never called the show before, make sure you call tonight, and you've got a couple of minutes to get your calls in. And a couple of days ago, yesterday was the eclipse, Steve Milloy, and it made me think about this correlation between this and something that you'd spoken about with the Northern Lights and how they surprisingly slash energy bills for people. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so there was a new study in Finland showing that the Northern Lights, which are, in fact caused by solar activity, they warmed the planet enough to reduce heating costs in Finland. Now we've been told for decades now that climate science is settled and that emissions drive all the warming. Well, that's clearly not the case. You mentioned the eclipse. People felt how powerful the sun was when it was blocked out by the moon because the temperature got noticeably cooler. The sun, in fact, drives the warming. We have these things that, while we don't have the moon crossing the sun every day, we do have clouds, and they have a modulating effect, and none of the climate models really do clouds very well. It's all based on emissions. So, it's really the big yellow ball in the sky, not the invisible thing that comes out of, car tailpipes. So, we have a lot to learn. I just wish that people would, say it was great that everybody got to see the eclipse and all this attention was paid to the sun. We need to pay even more attention to the sun when it comes to climate. And I try to cover this on my, X feed every day.
Outstanding. And Steve, let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter, X, or any of the other social media, as well as your websites.
So my website is junkscience.com, but because X is such a cool social media feed, I am on there most of the time, and I debunk climate hysteria daily from the media on X. You can get me at Junk Science.
Folks, give him a follow at Junk Science. Steve Milloy, that's Milloy. He is fantastic on this issue and really just makes sense of what should be the obvious, but, they do a good job at promoting their stuff. Steve Milloy, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thanks for being with us tonight.
All right, Rich. Thank you for having me.
You bet. All right, folks, we continue straight ahead. Your calls and more. This is where we spend an hour talking to America, right? We got calls from all over the place, from the middle of the country to the West Coast to the East Coast. You name it. Everybody has a chance to dial in. Feel free. It's Rich Valdez, America at Night. Coming right back.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, and happy to be here with you. Our telephone number, 833-482-5337, 8334-VALDEZ. This is hour number 3 of the Tuesday night program. We call it Open Phone America. It's a time-honored tradition here. Started back in 1978 by Larry King, continued for 3 decades beyond that by the late, great Jim Bohannon. And now with you all, we're doing it together and we're doing it live. Happy to speak with you. I see there's a few people that are online already to sound off and let their voices be heard. I'm looking forward to that. If you want to get in, now is the time, 833-4-VALDEZ. And there's a few things that are going on, right? I mean, we talked about a few things tonight. We've talked about the election that's upcoming with the incoming chairwoman of the Republican Party, Lara Trump. We've had some discussion on communism and how it's infiltrating our culture, whether we like it or not. And we've had some conversation about climate change and how, in many cases, it's junk science. It's just designed to scare you, right? To scare the genes off of you. So we're going to talk about all of that in addition to everything that you guys want to talk about. But some of the things that I was looking at earlier and I flagged was this one report in the Epoch Times. It says that Democrats commit vastly more dark money than Republicans do, at least for 2024. A look at the dark money groups and their backers fueling the 2024 presidential election. Democrats are outspending Republicans $800 million to $160 million in dark money. Now, these dark money groups are the ones that you can't track down. You don't know who they are, right? Mega donors, unions, they're all funding a massive spending effort aimed at reelecting Joe Biden. And again, Republicans are doing the same thing. We don't have unions the way they do, right? They have all the big unions. And they want to continue to advance the Democrats' power in Washington. So you've got major outside spending groups that say that they're going to spend nearly $800 million to support Biden's reelection. This is in addition to the massive financial resources that the campaign already has, right? They just made $25 million the other night. Of course, Trump has doubled that, but it doesn't mean that Biden's $25 million is something to shake a stick at, right? It's not. Now, you've got some progressive organizations like American Bridge 21st Century, Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy, Climate Power, the League of Conservation Voters, MoveOn.org, Republican Voters Against Trump, the SEIU, Service Employees International Union, and so many more. They've pledged a total of $792 million on the 2024 election to get Biden in there and to support Democrat candidates. So that's it, right? That's it. It's so lopsided, right? They've got all that, and then you've got the Republicans. That's it. And I just find it interesting that there's all this effort, and it's because they don't have the will of the people. When you have the will of the people, you don't have to go so hard on all this stuff, twisting everybody's arm for donations and forcing them to go here and there. They want to do it because they believe in this. And I'm sure there's some people that do. But for the most part, there are a lot of people that just want to do their own thing. And they don't want the government telling them what to do or the government persuading their union to tell them what to do. Right? It's just not a thing that they want to do. So I thought that was an interesting story, and I want to get your take on that as well. If you're a union member and you've been forced or strongly encouraged to vote one way or another, definitely let me know. I'd love to discuss that a little bit with you. And what did I wanted to play a clip of audio for you. It was of my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. She was on The Late Show last night with Stephen Colbert. And she says, no, my school debt will not be included in those who will benefit from the debt cancellation. Listen to this.
Just because I know how recently this was you. Are you one of the people who will benefit from this program?
Now, I don't think I will be. Actually, I'm going to be one of the few that doesn't. I'm a member of Congress. I'm a little bit outside the threshold and bounds. But if I wasn't, just a few years ago, waitress me 5 years ago would have benefited from it. Congresswoman me will not, but that's okay. I'll take the knock if it means that people can get relief. And, this is huge. This is people getting the student loan forgiveness, their student loans canceled. It means that, it's hope to buy a house or have a kid or travel abroad or maybe even go back to school and pursue a career that maybe they otherwise wouldn't have. I mean, one of the reasons that's not me now is because I didn't feel like I'd be able to afford medical school. And so hopefully someone else who's at an ISEF competition somewhere will be able to do that because of this.
So that's AOC. And to AOC, I say, oh, my goodness, imagine this. Somebody quick, give me a Nobel Peace Prize, because I was able to, I was able to buy a home. I was able to raise 2 kids that are both in college right now. All these things that she's saying she wasn't able to do, right? She wasn't able to have kids or travel because or buy a home because she had to pay student loans. Now, granted, I still owe some of mine. And Joe Biden, if you're listening, Joe El Viejito Biden, I will happily accept some of your forgiveness, and I will thank the American people for their contribution to my education. One that I abruptly ended after political disagreements, by the way. But I say all of that to say, listen, AOC comes on there and she's saying, oh, no, because I make too much money. I don't even think that's the case. I think you could probably make 200, 250 when you're talking about 400% above poverty. And that's how they're restructuring these loans. They're basically changing the terms so that you don't have to pay it back. And that, in effect, causes a debt cancellation is what they're calling it. But in reality, it's just a restructuring of the loan where you don't have to pay any money back. I guess they're one and the same, those two things. But that's how they're getting around what the Supreme Court mandated for them. And I think that's clever on Biden's part. Whether it's legal or not, I don't know. We'll see how that goes if there's any traction in the courts. But this is where we are. So I want to get to your calls and more. I see we have calls. Let's see. Wow, from all over the place. Ohio, Illinois, Maryland. Let's see. Where else do we got here? Pennsylvania, Idaho. Man, what a unique bunch of calls. We're going to get to your calls momentarily. And let me see. Maybe we could do one now. We have a couple of minutes where I can do that, and I'm happy to do that. Let me see. Who was on hold the longest? Let us go to Jeff calling from Elyria, Ohio on WEOL. Jeff, go right ahead.
Hello, Rich.
Hi. What's up?
Yeah, I just want to congratulate you on your show. That I haven't listened that much. I used to listen to Bohannon, but I tuned in. I was happy to hear what you guys were talking about.
Oh, thank you.
You had, those electric cars, I don't see how that's ever going to work out. That's nonsense to me. I'm 61 years old, and I think they're making up so much fake news, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And it's funny. I think electric cars work just fine if like our guest Steve Milloy said, as long as it's an option for people. Like I wanted a Tesla because it was cool. Nobody else had one. And it was an electric car. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I wasn't thinking of driving it to California or anything. And then I realized how expensive they were, and I kind of gave up on it. But you're right. It doesn't work when you force everybody to buy one. When everybody has to have an electric car, and you need these charging stations everywhere. You got wall-to-wall charging stations everywhere you go. That will never work. It just won't. We don't have the electrical grid for it. We don't have the capacity for it otherwise. So I think you bring up an excellent point, Jeff.
Yeah, also, can I comment on the unions?
Sure.
Yeah, I was in the steel workers before, and they're always pushing Democratic stuff. They would tell the guys who to vote for. They should have no business in that.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you, my brother's a union guy, and doorman in New York City. And he always tells me about how the union is persuading him, pushing him, pressuring him, and he gets into these big fights with them because they try to use more power than they actually have.
That's right.
It's a real shame.
The unions have become very corrupt, because when I heard what these auto worker heads of the union were making, I couldn't believe it. I forget what it was, but it was totally ridiculous.
A lot more than you and me, right? That's for sure.
Oh, definitely. But Trump,
brother,
if he doesn't get back in there, I think this country's done for.
I agree with you, Jeff. I think that, and it's not because it's Trump. I think he's equipped to do the job, but it's really just a matter of timing. The left did a number on the country where we've gained, or I should say we've ceded a lot of ground that they've gained. And it's time for us to kind of fight back and then take back. And that's not going to be that easy, but it doesn't happen until we start. So, Jeff, thank you for the cool call, I'm saying. Elyria, Ohio, WEOL. And really nice of you to say those nice, kind words about me. Folks, don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue with your calls and more. I just want to bring you up to speed on something that's happening in the Windy City. As you guys know, we're on the world famous WGN in Chicago. Although they play us on a delay, we are there nonetheless. And one of the big stories coming out of the Windy City right now is that Mayor Lori Lightfoot has been hired to investigate Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Now, Tiffany Henyard was a big political adversary and critic of Mayor Lightfoot's. And now that they are looking to investigate Mayor Henyard on some, I'm going to say malfeasance, right? Because there's a bunch of different things. They're now turning to former federal prosecutor and former Chicago mayor Lori Lightfoot to lead the investigation into her political enemy. I mean, you can't make this up. The comedy kind of writes itself. And Jenna Barnes from WGN TV in Chicago has the report.
Lori Lightfoot begins her work here in Dalton after the Board of Trustees voted to hire her as a special investigator into Mayor Tiffany Henyard.
Motion passed.
You can hear it there. Huge applause from the crowd when the four present trustees voted to appoint the former Chicago mayor and former federal prosecutor. Lightfoot will be paid $400 an hour with what the trustees call a check-in at $30,000. On the list of issues she will investigate, Henyard's trip to Las Vegas, including spending on that trip and reports of misconduct, hiring contractors without requests for proposal, paying vendors without approval, and paying the village prosecutor, Michael Delgado, more than $900,000 over the course of 2 years.
Got it. So check this out. So this story, it's a very interesting story. Tiffany Henyard goes from Chicago to an economic development conference. And at this economic development conference, they bring one of the police officers. They also bring one of the assistants to the mayor. And they also bring some county representatives. And lo and behold, one of the young women that's on the trip, one of the assistants to Mayor Henyard, she says that after the event that is being held in Las Vegas, Nevada, that she felt at dinner, she felt woozy and felt dizzy, and she needed to lay down. One of the gentlemen that was there at the dinner said, "Oh, I'll bring you to my room." Brings her to her room. She doesn't remember anything after that. or even after dinner. And she wakes up in this guy's room and she feels weird. She, according to her complaint. And she says that she notified part of the security detail for the mayor, which was this Chicago cop, and that he said, you know, I forget what he said, but I know that he recorded part of what she said. And then later he denies what she says, and then it's a he said, she said about what's going on. And then he gets demoted, and she gets put on a medical leave, and then she's terminated. And so now she's filing a lawsuit to get her money back, back pay, future pay, all sorts of restitution. And it is quite the scandal, right? It's very Bill Cosby-esque, if you will. And they don't know which way they're going with it because they don't know if this is true or not true. It's a real he said, she said. But that is the mess that they're in. And who's going to come figure it out and get to the bottom of it? Lori Lightfoot, that's right, the former mayor of Chicago herself, Madam Beetlejuice, will be on deck to investigate this. And it's just bizarre to me that that's the case, but that is in fact the case. So I want to get some reaction to this. Let's go to Diane in Chicago, Illinois on WGN. Diane, what do you think about Lori Lightfoot investigating the Dalton mayor?
Oh, excuse me. That's a subject I just looked up today on the internet, and I didn't get the whole grasp of it, but I think it's somebody named Holmes. I think that Holmes is one of those community activists. He's an African-American guy who's being accused. But Lori Lightfoot, all this smacks to me of, first of all, getting $400. I think she, they say she took a lower rate than she normally would charge. And like you say, it's politics and some kind of vengeance against that mayor, I would guess. But I haven't looked deeply into it. It is a little convoluted to my mind. But Lori Lightfoot used to be a prosecutor, but it is political, I think. And
is she one of your favorites in Chicago?
Wants to get into politics. She wants to get into politics a little. Oh, thank you for letting me say a response back and forth with you. I was a little critical talking to your screener, saying that I'm a little dismayed that when we do, because there's nowhere to talk back and forth so much in life, and that's why I talk to so many people out and about. And now I'll digress and say, because I talk to so many people, and I've had many jobs in life. One of them was security guard, along with hotels and restaurants before that. And then when I wasn't getting those because of illegal people taking those jobs. And
we got 30 seconds left before the commercial, Diane. Go ahead.
And then, so I talked to frequently in the loop, security people. And this one lady I talked to the other day who was a security person in a retail place, she is African-American. She's voting for Trump. She didn't even know who the mayor was, the current one. I was surprised that she said she voted for Biden in 20, but now she's going to vote for Trump. Now, this other lady I talked to, she was a little more refined in her knowledge and politics, and she's also African-American, going to vote for Trump. So the trend
isn't that something? We're seeing a trend of a lot of people, in particular people of color, that are jumping on board voting for Donald Trump because they realize, I think, that this is the best option for them, for their families, and for America. Diane, thank you for your call and all of your wonderful insight. I appreciate the back and forth with you. A big shout out to WGN in Chicago. Folks, the rest of your calls and more when we come back. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Mexican cartels are taking territory right here in the United States, and our authorities are trying to fight back to get it back. Well, the Mexican organized crime groups are issuing threats against sheriffs, against border agents, and even against their family members. Matt Finn said this. He said, "Unbelievable, a Border Patrol agent in Sunland Park, New Mexico, just told us a mountain in the United States is not ours anymore. It's theirs," referring to the cartels. Fox News said that a fifth-generation Arizona rancher said an influx of illegal migrants crossing his land in recent years has increased his fear that terrorists are successfully sneaking into America. He said, "We have no security on our ranch, nor in most places along the border anymore." And notes as well, border ranchers previously told Fox News that his wife, while home alone, opened the door to MS-13 gang members carrying guns. He said it's kind of scary. That's just life on the border. This is the kind of stuff people are dealing with on the U.S. side of the U.S.-Mexico border. This was an American territory, folks. This was not Mexico.
Not Mexico. That's what's happening in the United States. That's Joshua Philippe with NTD News on that report. And the border continues to be a crisis. It continues to be a problem. It continues to be a source of danger for this country, allowing in men of military age to just be here, whether part of a sleeper cell or part of just a massive influx of illegal immigration. Either way you slice it, this is no bueno. So I want to get your thoughts and opinions on everything we're talking about, including this topic. Let me see. Where do we go here? Let's see who's been holding the longest. Bear with me. Bear with me. We have Herb. Herb, who is driving through Pennsylvania, listening to KDKA. Herb, when you hear about this immigration problem and you've got people that are just at their wits' end, how does that make you feel?
I actually called to talk about the Confucius Center since...
I know what you want to talk about, but I asked you a question.
I think you're just ringing on Republican talking points. I think the border is an issue. But if either party really wanted to do something about it, they both would be talking about comprehensive immigration reform.
What does that mean, comprehensive immigration reform? What does that mean? That sounds like a talking point of people who lack intelligence.
Well, comprehensive immigration reform means that the system in which we have is completely broken. If a person wants...
What is broken about the system? Because this same broken system seemed to have held people out when Trump was president just 4 short years ago. So what's broken about it today?
Well, as an example, we can't even get the people that work for us in Afghanistan to this country right now, which we owe them. And part of
well, that's got nothing to do with the border.
The border is part of immigration.
I'm talking about a border, right? It's in the bottom of Texas, and people are walking right through, and you have immigration people that have stopped doing their jobs because they were told to do so by Alejandro Mayorkas. You're saying it's a broken system, and I'm saying that Biden and his people broke the system, and we're trying to have a discussion there. So my question to you is, what is broken about the border?
Well, I don't think that the current administration is nearly as attentive to the southern border. Obviously have two, not to mention fees, nearly as attentive as the previous administration. I would agree with you there.
Sure, and that's not really the point I'm making, though. I'm just saying, like, what is broken about it? Because in my opinion, I think if Biden were attentive, as you're saying, if he were to say, all right, do your jobs at the border, and let's shut this thing down, I think we would have a lot more safety and security in the country. And then we could tackle things like, should we continue chain migration? Do we have the right interpretation of the 14th Amendment, where we allow every person that's born in this country to become a citizen, even if they're on vacation, that type of thing. These are very interesting questions that we really haven't even tackled, I think. So if that's the part of the immigration system that you think is broken, I think we can try to address it. But if we don't try to address it, we don't get anywhere.
I think the line to get into the United States legally, when I say the system is broken, that's what I mean. That,
so what would you do? How would you change it?
Well, you got to simplify it, number one, and you need to beef up the Department of Homeland Security and the State Department, for that matter, as it relates to visas. This is something that a lot of people, bipartisan-wise, talk about, that we do need people coming to this country, but they have to have skills, they have to have their backgrounds checked, they have to want to come here and assimilate. There's a lot that goes into it. And so, unfortunately, because our system isn't streamlined, isn't made to be easy and allow people to immigrate here legally in an expeditious fashion, a large portion of it is, are there terrorists or drug deals and all that stuff coming through the southern border? I would say yes, but I would say it's much, much less than is put on by certain media outlets. It's a lot of people that just want to come and make a better life for themselves. And I'll add one more point to that. If the economies in these countries in Central and predominantly South America were in better shape, if their governments were stronger, if there wasn't as much violence and drug trafficking and upheaval, then you wouldn't have as much immigration illegally coming through the southern border as you do now.
Yeah. Well, I used to believe that too, but then there was the election of Nayib Bukele, right? And the new guy in Argentina, and we see them doing fairly well with their economy. And we still see an influx of people coming through. And it's not necessarily because they can't make it in their own country, but because the almighty dollar is still the almighty dollar, even though it's a weekend at times and it's not worth what it used to be worth, and it's fiat currency. People still want this ability to make as much money as they can, work here for 20 years, send money back home. It's just not an option in their country, even though getting a job and making a living is likely an option in their country. And I will concede that you're right, that if they weren't broke and third world like El Salvador has been for many years, that it would be better. But as we've seen it improve, we haven't seen much improvement on immigration. And if it did improve from those particular states or these nations like El Salvador, it's now coupled with folks coming in from Northern Africa, folks coming in from Haiti, folks coming in from the Asian countries, in particular China, and people from Lebanon, people from all over the world. And we're seeing such a different representation of people that are coming across the border now that we haven't seen before. It's no longer, the old argument that, we went and we disrupted Central and South America, and now because the Northern Triangle has been disrupted and the United States stuck their nose in it yet again, we have to accept every last person. And the final point I'll make is I think everything you said sounded sensible. The only issue that I have with it is that I think this is the most streamlined immigration process we've ever had, albeit a very sloppy one and devoid of visas. They've kind of done away with that, right? Think of it as a moratorium on visas. The border is open. If you want to get into this country, show up, and they will release you into the interior of this country with a plane ride to Florida, to New York, or a bus ticket, and a debit card, and all of these other perks that they're giving. So to me, this is, we say the line is too long. Listen, I think we're pushing 7 million or 10 million people that have come into the country, whether they're good guys or bad guys, right? Bad hombres or good hombres. Either way you slice it, this is the biggest mass migration this country's ever accepted, and it's happened in 3 short years with Joe Biden. So if anything, if you're a fan of Biden's, then this is it. He has fixed the immigration system. All you have to do is codify what he's done, and voila, it's been fixed. Anyway, I'm up against the clock. Herb, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Big shout out to Pennsylvania, KDKA. Folks, don't go anywhere. Coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, Americanos, my amigos, we continue with your thoughts and opinions on all the hottest news stories of the night. Let's go to Sarah, Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. Go right ahead.
Hey, good to talk to you.
Likewise.
I just want to say, I think you'd make a great vice president.
Oh, man. Me too. I'm available, sir. I'm available.
That's right. You're kind of like the Yang to Donald Trump's Yang. Donald Trump would say something, you back him on a lot of issues, but you have a way of communicating with people, and you're very understanding and willing to listen to people. And so he says something, and then you could just kind of finesse it over and kind of explain to people, hey, this is what he really means, and kind of, take a little of the rough edges off. So I
imagine
say Rich
that.
for vice president.
I love that. El Trumpito and Valdez with an S. That would be a really cool combo. From your lips to God's ears. What an exciting day, right? And I got a whole house called the Naval Observatory. Oh my gosh! All right, I'm not going to go too far down that road. Now, what do you think with immigration, Sarah? I feel like it's not getting any better. Do you?
I don't think it's getting better. And now I know the guy who called before, he didn't sound like a liberal, but I have heard a lot of liberals say, well, it's a broken system. Well, I'm going to tell you, ideologically, the liberals have done their best to break it. Anytime we've tried to say, hey, we should limit the people who come in, or we should vet them, or they should be willing to assimilate and learn the language, the left always cries, oh, that's racist, and they always push for,
xenophobic.
multilingual.
That guy who called in, he made a lot of great points. He's, I think, a perfect example of people that are frustrated with what many people call the uniparty. Republicans and Democrats that work in concert together to screw over we the people, spend a lot of money, to keep spending a lot of money, and not fix any problems. And I think we've seen so much of that when you have a handful of people like you do in the Freedom Caucus and others that are like, hey, look, you keep spending this money and we're going to take you out of here, like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz before her. Somebody has to stand up to the spenders. And I'm not trying to trash the speaker. I think the speaker is a solid guy, and he's doing what he's got to do to govern. But ultimately, somebody has to play politics here and hold people accountable, and I think that's what's happening. And I think you're right. If it doesn't happen, they'll just keep doing what they do, Sarah.
Yeah, and the left has always historically been for open borders, and people can just come in here just because they want to. I mean, it's an ideology. In past immigration debates going back to the history of this country, they've always fought against any kind of control over our borders or who we can accept. And, our population's growing. There's going to come to a point where we have too many people in this country, and we've just got to say no,
I think we're at that point like a year ago. Sarah, thanks for the call. Big shout out to WBIW. Let's keep it going. Let's go to James. He's in Akron, Ohio on WHIZ. James, what's your thought on the current state of affairs in America? Oh, James, you got to put your radio down so that you can hear me. Let's put him on hold and we'll come back to him. All right, let's keep going. Let's go to Paul. He's also in Zanesville, Ohio on WHIZ. Go right ahead, Paul.
Hey, good evening, Rich. I really enjoyed your segment there with Lara Trump. If Joe Biden hadn't reversed all Donald Trump's policies, we wouldn't have the problems we have in this country right now. I mean, what do you do? How many do you write off? 71, 91, something like that?
Think about that for a second, right? Imagine this. Imagine if Biden would have been like, well, the Trump policies, they worked. I'm sticking with them. And he would have governed similar to Trump. The country would be better off. And I probably wouldn't even be sitting here. What would I do? How would I beat up Joe El Viejito Biden? I wouldn't have anything to say because I'd say, I think this guy's doing a great job. And people would say, I'm a sellout because, what are we going to do? And you can always count on politicians, in particular power-thirsty ones like Joe Biden of any party, because he's the type just like Mitch McConnell to me, that will do anything and roll over anybody at any cost to maintain the power he's got. And I think that's part of the problem. And not every politician has that. Every politician wants power and needs power because this is about the balance of influence. But not everybody's willing to sell everything out just to get their way. You know what I mean, Paul?
Yes, I really do. And can I say one more thing now? I got dumbed down a little bit today. I'll tell you, when I seen this Sonny Hoyson on The View saying that the eclipse was caused by climate change, and she says also are these cicadas, which it's cicadas, ma'am, that the reason that this is all happening is because of climate change. Well, lady, look, this has been happening for thousands of years. These are the kinds of things that you don't stop. Yeah, and for these climate crazy people, man, that's the way the world's worked for years.
Right. It's kind of like every what is it, November, December, it snows where I live, and that's the climate changing. It's a season. That's what it's supposed to do, Paul.
Right, and I just think this is, if people are going to listen to that kind of crap when somebody don't even check their facts, well then, man, we got a problem here in America, and Joe Biden's one of them. People, I got news for you. You better vote for Donald Trump. That's what I'm telling you, man, because he's got it right. Yep. All right. Thanks for listening to me on a Tuesday night, Rich. I really appreciate it. I love your show and all your guests and all your callers. So you have a nice
Paul,
evening.
Thank you, brother. Likewise to you. Very kind of you. You're a gentleman and a scholar. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls in the speed round. Idaho, Maryland, Montana. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, here we go. It's the speed round. Let's go to Kalispell, Montana, KOFI, and check in with Al. Al, tell us how communism started spreading globally in the early 1900s.
Yeah, sorry about that. The SEIU, Service Employees International Union, its parent organization is the Industrial Workers of the World, the IWW. That's the first international outreach of communism from Moscow, 1920.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? I read something years ago, and I did a whole podcast on it, of how the communists back in the early 1900s, their entire plan of getting into so many different institutions and cultures in the United States was to do it by way of labor unions. That was their number one way. And they had this whole plan. You could look this up if you'd like to read. Not just you, anybody else, because it's a pretty lengthy document, 45, 50 pages. But it talks about the national minority. And at the time, they were talking about African Americans. And they were saying how they would, this is, again, Communist Party USA document found at Marxist.org. And they were talking about how they would appoint folks that were African American to positions of no consequence, like a shop steward or something like that, just to get them involved in the process and to make them feel heard so that they could go ahead and other them, so that they would pit them against their white counterparts. And it was like the white communist, the white union person was somehow way nicer than any other white person to create this racial strife. And look at us here more than 100 years later, and look at the problems we've got. Al, excellent point. Big shout out to KOFI. Thank you, sir. Let's go to Cumberland, Maryland, WCBC. Frank, you're on with Rich Valdez. Tell us about the CIA.
You open your second hour with the announcement that XCI Director Brennan will be on your show. This is a very big deal.
No. We have a former ambassador that's going to be commenting on Brennan. Brennan wouldn't accept the invitation.
Oh. Because he was an ex-communist, and he was the equivalent of Antifa, wasn't he?
Oh,
I mean, he's
absolutely. You're right. And, it's funny. I went to North Bergen High School, and he's from North Bergen. It's so funny how, birds of a feather flock together. There's a lot of communists that come out of New Jersey and New York. And very good call, Frank, because this is a dangerous place to be. To have had him there, Gus Hall, he was the campaign manager for Gus Hall, Communist Party USA, back in the 80s. And Paul in Boise, KBOI, the Chinese are coming at us from different directions. Fear-mongering through education. You're 100% right. That's the exact communism that we're talking about. Big shout out to you and everybody in Idaho. Listen, I'm coming back tomorrow if they let me, God willing. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.